Welcome to part two of this series where I talk about the declining fertility rates and changing demographics. Part two is going to be focused on what I call the historical fertility rates and the baby boom and the decline afterwards. So many people think that the baby boom was the peak of fertility rates, where it just reached the all-time high there and is then declined. No, it's not the top, it's not the peak of the fertility rates here, because historically, the pre-industrial revolution, the fertility rates were much higher than during the baby boom. It's indeed 4 or 5 kids per family during the baby boom were common, but pre-industrial revolution in the United States, or even a little bit after, you would see a much higher rate than compared to baby boom. Baby boom was just a lot of factors combined, because post-industrial revolution, where we changed from more of a feudal sort of ish, more like a farm kind of type based work, to a more industrial, more urban, more factory based work. It's just it's quite different, because baby boom just had a lot of factors into that. So post-war victory, post-war reconstruction, a lot of soldiers returning from war, marriage was all-time high, like spirits were very high, people were extremely optimistic, and there was a lot of opportunity to build, grow, and do a lot of things, and just family values, religion, a lot of things were interplaying there during the baby boom. And there was a very traditional aspect of having kids and that sort of stuff. And what happens is this all led to what we saw as a baby boom in the 50s, post-war period. But before that, we were gradually going on a decline. It's like many nations were already going on a decline. United States was going on a decline in fertility rates. Japan was also declining pre-war period. Canada, other countries were also all declining, just at a slower pace. Then you spike back up after the baby boom, but then you drop hard during the 70s, during the counterculture, during the second wave feminism, during the period, the hippie, the very progressive, a lot of things happened in that decade. The 70s just promoted different alternate lifestyles. It just eroded the nuclear family. Just increased participation of women in the workforce. It changed the game entirely. It led to women just more, a lot of more women into education, a lot more women into the workforce. So what happens is just naturally this delays family formation, delays marriage, delays everything, because more women are going to the workforce for more careers and more educated, many things there. I'm not saying that's a wrong path, but this heavily contributed to it. It's also led to like a career pressures, career focus, instead of like just focusing on having kids, being a stay-home mom. It just opened much more opportunities. It just changed the dynamic entirely. There, so many women just took the path, or they would have less kids, because I mean, after the baby boom period, there was quite of a fear of overpopulation. There was even that Paul Ehrlich book about population bomb, where it was like we were going to lack resources. There was like a very large famine, and there's also the fact of people were starting to think a lot of like climate and many other things later on. So it's just started a sort of a wave of pessimism, a lot of wave like, oh, we're gonna get more war, a lot more concerns in worldwide. There's just started a wave of pessimism. It's just terrible. It's just something that started spreading worldwide, and then you also have like the United States influence, the USDA, just the CAA, that kind of stuff. Like they also had missions around the world, like promoting family planning and that sort of stuff. It also take influence quite a bit in many countries. Just those investments on that, and you also and there's also the thing about abortion, and there's also contraceptives, but this is more like, doesn't mean that just because it's allowed, like Roe v. Wade, after the decision, that sort of thing, is doesn't mean that it's just because it's allowed that a lot of people do it. People will do it if it's allowed, but for different reasons, because it's more acceptable. It's just not repulsive. It's just something different for them. So abortion was accepted. It was not repulsive. It was not a terrible thing to do. And contraceptives, just also having more sex for pleasure, and etc., etc., etc. So I'm not gonna state a stance on abortion here, but what I'm saying is just that if people were having so many abortions, it was just because it was less viewed as a taboo compared to other things. Just was not stigmatized, was not repudiated, and that's why like people would just abort more. Like it's quite significant in many cases, but there are a lot of countries where abortion is legal, but is pretty low. Like Japan abortion is it's legal, but compared to United States, the amount of abortions per capita is just much lower than 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 in the United States. So, but yet they have a quite low, much lower fertility rate. So it is just a matter, like it doesn't mean specifically that's because it's allowed that people do it, because there's a lot of stigma culture and that sort of thing. So this is my argument for like people that's blaming abortion on that thing, but this is just because culturally people are just doing that. It's not necessarily because it's legal. I mean, it can be a part of it, but it's just not viewed positively in many countries to do that. And here in the United States, it's just, or like UK and many other countries, just viewed differently compared to Japan, where there's like very few abortions and this sort of things. So there's that. That's the argument for it. Like, I don't care if you're pro-lifer or you're pro-choice on this argument. What I'm talking about is just, it doesn't matter at this point that it's legal or not. It's just a fact of like people aborting it for selective reasons, that sort of thing. Just if it's more accepted, or it's just viewed as a burden on that sort of thing, just that's why it's complicated, because people, well, anyways, I've been going way too much on this topic. It's just what I believe is just that just because it's legal, it doesn't mean that it's just like their reason for it, their reason for the decline of fertility rates. This is much more social cultural than just because of abortions. It's much more ingrained in the culture about the woman, the change of woman priorities, increasing choices in the 70s, like change of like much more women, much increased women in the workforce, etc., etc., delay marriage. There are so many factors, but those are like so many. Those are the main factors in the social cultural perspective. Of course, there's the issue of the costs. Of course, the effects, but it's not the primary issue. Housing also affects, but the social cultural issue here is a really big thing. A mass urbanization is also can also be a reason for that. But if you wanna the it's just that the social cultural aspect is the hardest to quantify. It's the hardest to work out on because you cannot get numbers on it and answers and surveys. You a lot of people are not gonna give you sometimes really truthful answers because if you ask, then sometimes like, oh, are you a couple? Yes. Have you decided to have kids or etc. Whatever, and many people will just a lot of things they will just opt for a just a getaway answer or a more of like a more PC answer over what they really feel or what they really see it just differently. So that's the problem. It's just much harder to quantify. So, and this aspect is one that is very overlooked by governments when they're doing policies on this because it's hard to quantify. It's social. It's just really hard. But that's the progression. So pre-industrial revolution is just fertility rates were quite high actually, but after we have been at that gradual decline, post-war period sprang up in many countries, pessimism, population, etc. As I mentioned before, in more women workforce, more women in education, delays in marriage, delays, career pressures, focus on career, more options, more nowadays bigger stigma for having stay-home mother, more bigger stigma for work for having families, mothers, and like there's also the thing about jealousy because like oh Mary and John are such a lovely couple. They don't have kids, but they have vacations every now and then. They have went to Paris, they have went to Rome, they have went to many other countries. Oh, look at that! They have a Gucci bag. Oh, look at that! They have a bunch of Veblen goods that I don't know what the heck they're buying for, just for consumerism, just for to show off status. So there is that factor of jealousy, also that envy that oh they have no kids, we have one kid and I wish we I don't want to have more kids, so otherwise we cannot have more expensive things to do. Like sure you can have a vacation where there are sometimes like I'm not against that, and it's just not saying I'm not telling you how to decide to do I'm not telling you how to live your life, but just a lot of things are people focusing more on one thing for themselves instead of like just spending on themselves instead of like having a family and kind of things, just because it's a completely different experience by itself, like being having a family, having kids, and you compare to travel alone and that sort of things is way different. It's a very different experience compared to that. So it's really hard to compare because but anyways, this is part two. I hope you enjoyed it. This is more of explanation part. So if you have any clarification that you need to ask, you should leave other comments. I'll try to answer it. Thank you for watching.